let's pick up where we left off with what is a root. So we've gone over what is a square root, what is a cube root. There's also fourth roots and fifth roots, but we're going to focus on squares and cubes this year. So we need to also know, how do we approximate their value? There's going to come a time where we don't have a calculator, and we're asked to do this. We're going to be asked to approximate their location on a number line. So there's a couple steps that we can do to figure this out, but what's required is that we still understand things. So let's go back. We're going to approximate the square root of 3 and the square root of 2. So let's start with the square root of 2. It's not a perfect root, meaning there's nothing times itself that gives me 2. The only thing that gives me 2 is 1 times 2, okay? But how do I determine where it is without a calculator? We're going to determine what two perfect squares it falls between. Well, how do I know what perfect squares it falls between? You should have your perfect square roots memorized. That's why I said if you can go up to 15, okay? So you got to know the square root of 225 and below. If you have that memorized, that's going to make this process a lot easier, okay? So let's think. What are two that it's between? Well, square root of 1. The number 2 is between 1. But what's the very next perfect root? 4. Because the square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. So where do you think this is going to fall on our number line? It's going to fall between 1 and 2. Now, here's how I do this. Is 2 closer to 1 or 4? It's closer to 1, so it's going to be on the left side of my halfway mark. So I'm going to really place it about here because we're approximating. We're not getting an exact. The next video, part 3, that'll get us a lot closer to an exact number. So now I can go approximate where the square root of 3 falls. So 3, it's not a perfect root. So how do I determine this? I determine what 2 it falls between. This is also between the square root of 1 and the square root of 4. We just did this on the last one. It's between the number 1 and 2. But the square root of 3 obviously has to be bigger than the square root of 2. So on our number line, when I go and plot this, let's think of where it's going to fall. It's closer to 4. So it's going to be on the other side of my halfway mark. So really, it should be about here. Okay? So a majority of this is determining what perfect squares it falls between. That's half the battle. So let's look at this. Which numbers are between 4 and 5? Well, think about this. You got to think about what their squares are. What's 4 squared? What's 5 squared? Okay, so that'll help you with what root falls between 4 and 5. Pause the video and try this one on your own. Okay, so if I take a look, it says which numbers. That should signal to you there's going to be more than one. And it says select all that apply. If you see a problem like this, there is guaranteed to be more than one. So 4 squared is 16. 5 squared is 25. You got it. Square root of 17 and square root of 22 fall between those two numbers. So right now, write a summary of what we just did today. I know it was a quick one because you're also going to go watch part 3 as well. But it's important to understand what the two perfect square roots something falls between. That's going to help guide you in everything you do when you approximate. If you have any questions, you can comment below or ask them.